the contemporary English version. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and God in heaven will allow whatever you allow on earth, but He will not allow anything you don't allow. So God's coming into agreement with us in the contemporary English version. The English Standard Version. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom in the Good News Bible. Whatever you prohibit on earth will be prohibited in heaven. Whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. The English Standard Version. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you prohibit on earth will have been prohibited in heaven. Whatever you permit on earth will have been permitted in heaven. The King James Version. And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. The modern King James says, and I will give the keys of the kingdom of heaven to you. And whatever you may bind on earth, having been bound in heaven, and whatever you may loose on earth shall occur, having been loosed in heaven. So I missed that in that first portion. And whatever you may bind on earth shall occur, having been bound in heaven. I think I skipped that having been shall occur on the whatsoever you shall bind on earth. Now the Revised Version says, I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Now I want to take a real close look here about binding and loosing, because the key and the key of David, I believe, are definitely linked, and we're going to dig just a bit more into it. Okay, I want to pause there for just for a few moments and take a look at the Greek word for bind. That word is deo, literally meaning, it is a verb, and so oftentimes verbiage or verbs are more literal than figurative, so we have to take them a bit more seriously than some of the nouns, because nouns we can oftentimes dig through and find so many different meanings for that fit in the same context. But with verbs, oftentimes you dig and you find a single, even though there may be 4 or 5 different meanings to the word in English, we find a single one that really seems to fit. And it's kind of interesting here, because that verb literally, and the one that fits best, the description that fits best or definition, is to become necessary to decree something. But the interesting thing is, when I dug that same Greek word out and I took it back to its oldest root word, one of the older root words is deomai. And that word deomai literally means to pray. So when we bind something, we're simply praying about it. And I tend to think of binding in a couple different ways. One, you can bind something like with super glue, bind it together, and it's stuck now. It makes hopefully a permanent bond when something is broken and we bind it back together. So you can bind something like this, or the word bind, to tie together, or to chain up. And when I think in terms of those English understandings of the word bind, that's very Greek thinking. And the interesting thing about this is that Jesus was not Greek. The New Testament was written in Greek because it was a predominant language of the day, but Jesus spoke Chaldean. He spoke an older version of Hebrew, one that was very difficult to translate for a very long time. And it's just been in the last, probably 4 or 5 decades that the Chaldean language has been revived in Israel, and researchers and linguists in Israel have come along with better and better understandings of the Hebrew. So, looking at this from a Greek perspective, it makes sense that it would be bind, chain together, tie up, handcuff, shackle, whatever. But from a Hebrew mind, from a Jewish mind, Jewish thinking, Hebrew thinking of that day, that doesn't fit because they weren't Greek thinkers. Everything in a Hebrew or a Jewish man's life in that day and time, especially those like Christ who followed the letter of the law, he was the only human being to ever exist that no fault could be found with him in regard to the law. Think about that for a moment. Look at the trial of Jesus. They could find no fault with him, and they were trying him under Jewish law. They had to bring in people that would accuse and tell falsities that would make it appear as though Jesus had somehow violated the law. But he is the only one in all of human history, all of human recorded history, to have never violated a single portion of Jewish law. So it doesn't make sense that Jesus, being that Mosaic-minded, in his life and in his dealings and in the practical application of the law in his everyday life, it doesn't make sense that Jesus would think with a Greek mind, which would be to bind together and so forth. So I dug deeper. That's why I felt it necessary to really dig this out. And when you look at the older Greek word, deomai, it shows that prayer decrees something. Deo means to become necessary, to decree something. Deomai means simply to pray. So when we pray on earth, we're making a connection to heaven. And there's an agreement and heaven. And we're going to get into that just a little bit more as we get further along in this teaching. So if we look at the Greek word for loose, which is luo, L-U-O, luo, which in this context, whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven, it means to break up, to crush, destroy, or to dissolve. Now that does sort of make sense when you think in terms of the Greek thinking of binding, being with shackles and handcuffs, to break or to crush those chains that are holding someone or something captive. But if you dig a little deeper, and this Greek root word is really hard for me to pronounce, so bear with me. I believe it's radugia. Radugia, that's it, I'm sorry. I did a Spanish R roll in it, and I shouldn't have done that. It's radugia. And that particular root word, radurgia, means, and this is the only definition that fits, and look it up in Thayer's dictionary and you'll see where I'm coming from, literally means to have an easiness in thinking or acting. An easiness of thinking or acting. So
what happened? Come on, come on, come on.